Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2018 and this experiment where we're taking a look at what would happen if you tried to bankrupt every Premier League team. Now when we left off last time we'd gone a year into the future, and while some teams had gone into administration such as Brighton, West Brom and Burnley all earning points deductions, only Brighton getting relegated though, we also noticed that the top teams were richer than ever. The minus £700 million had been completely reversed for Man City, an increase of what must be £1.2 billion in cash over 12 months. So the game doing absolutely everything that it can to fix the big clubs wherever possible. Some of them did have changes of ownership, which I suppose was to try and hide how the game had just created all this money out of absolutely nowhere. But most clubs just seem to magic the money out of thin air. So we've decided that going forward in today's episode, we're going to go forward 2 years, 1 year at a time. And each year I'm going to knock down whatever money any of these established Premier League clubs actually have. We're going to take them down initially to 500 million, minus 500 million, to see how much they have left at the end of the 12 months and what impact that's had. And then if that still doesn't work and the clubs are being given loads more money, we'll drop it down to 250 million, minus 250 million, and see if that has an impact. I know a few of you pointed out that reputation might be the thing allowing the clubs to get all this money back. So if in 2 years' time we haven't seen dramatic changes to the clubs and the way that they operate, then we will be lowering the reputation for the next episode. So do drop a like on the video if you are still enjoying this series. But let's go forward 12 months' time and see where the Premier League has gotten to. Well, we are now 12 months in the future, and you have to say that lowering the amount of debt that each of these teams are in seems to have had quite a big impact, because look at all of those points deductions on the left-hand side, even affecting clubs like Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea, all hit by points deductions. And ultimately, the reason that Manchester United have actually won the league is because they're the only team that didn't have a points deduction. Everybody behind them all suffered points deductions, and actually Arsenal would have won the league if they hadn't been given their own deduction. So incredibly interesting the way that that's broken up. I just want to go to the full stages screen and make sure it is only these teams that have suffered deductions. You can see the likes of Spurs not even qualifying for Europe because they will have failed financial fair play. But all of the other big teams are allowed to play in Europe, which is quite interesting, but so many of them suffering from points deductions. And if we have a look at the landmarks page for each team, you can see Arsenal actually went into administration. So they had the new owner come in before we gave them the next big hit of cash. And you can see that they came out of administration in December last year. But right now, though, if we look at the finances of the club, you can see they've got more money than ever. They've got £967 million, nearly £1 billion in their bank as a result of coming out of administration. And I mean, I'm no accountant, but I'm pretty sure you should not have £1 billion in cash after coming out of administration. And it just goes to highlight how much the game is going out of its way to fix this so that the big clubs remain big. And I think it is all due to reputation. You can see Bournemouth, currently 8th in the Premier League. They came out of administration in August of last year, having gone into it in the July. So in 1 month's time, they did manage to pull out of it. Their stadium capacity has gone up, but they failed financial fair play regulations, which means they will not be able to play in Europe. If we have a look at their finances actually and their club details, you can see they've got a decent amount of cash in the bank too. 68, nearly £70 million available to them in cash. Bristol, another team, they've had Undersoil Heated come in. Obviously, they are not affected by the finances, and I'm not going to touch their finances either, because these promoted clubs are the bar, really, for what would happen if we left clubs alone. You can see Burnley also come out of administration despite upgrading their training facilities. And if we look at their finances, they're probably pretty well recovered too. Nearly 48 million in the bank for Burnley. Chelsea also just come out of administration, but I assume they've got a huge amount of cash available to them, and it does certainly seem to be the case with over £500 million in their bank account. Everton have a new owner come in the 16th of June last year, which I think we may have seen already. You see they've got £108 million in cash as well. So we haven't actually seen a club with a deficit right now. Now, Leicester actually got relegated down in 18th place. And you can see they failed the financial fair play as well. If we look at their club details and finances, even they have got some £62 million in the bank. So none of the teams really suffering. Liverpool, another club to have gone into administration, but they've got £924 million. What justification does the game have for giving them this much money? It's absolutely unreal. Manchester City, how much do they have? They've got over £1 billion. You're not even allowed to have over £1 billion, and yet they've got 63 million more than the maximum value. The game is breaking its own limits in order to fix this for them. Bearing in mind they had minus £500 million at the start of this year. They've now got over £1 billion in cash. And if we look at their transfers, actually, I'm sure you'll see something quite interesting, in that they've not really spent any money despite all that cash being in the bank. In the previous year, 37 million. 33 million this year, but I assume they are going to make a huge wad of cash next year. They have sold quite a few big players though, which is interesting, and maybe a result of being administration is that some of the big players have left. Manchester United did win the Premier League, but they've also increased their stadium capacity to nearly £95,000, which makes me think they've probably got an awful lot of money available to them that they just shouldn't have. 380 million there, and all of these clubs just seem to have a load of cash available. Middlesbrough on their profile currently listed as rich. Are any of the clubs in any kind of financial difficulty? Newcastle are just secure, but even they've got 35 million. Insecure, finally we have Southampton are insecure. Their landmarks had to lower their youth category rating to a 3. Came out of administration in September of last year, but in their finances they've still got a positive £53 million. So they might have insecure finances, but they won't stay that way for long. Stoke as well, if we look at their money, they've got plenty of cash. Is that 326 for Stoke? 32 million. I was worried there. I thought it was 326 million. Swansea have had an awful lot happen. They've had 2 takeovers since we started hitting their finances. They finished bottom of the Premier League, but they've still got an enormous amount of money, 178 million in the bank account for Swansea. Spurs failed the financial fair play, which is interesting. If we look at their money, they've still got 95 million in the bank. Watford, they have been struggling, had administration happen a couple of times now, but still with just about fine bank balances. You can see it's not really affecting their season either. West Bromwich listed as rich and West Ham listed as secure. Their finances probably not too impacted. You can see they've got a ridiculous amount of cash too. I do not understand the rationale behind this. Maybe one of you can let me know down in the comments how this is happening. But it is absolutely unreal the way that the teams are recovering. I mean, Manchester City were in administration and now have over £1 billion in cash. So I'm going to mess with their finances one more time. Drop it all down to about 250 million, which will hopefully stop the fix that has been happening every single time. But let's go forward another year and see how it's impacted them. Well, we're another year into the future. You can see on the Premier League table here, Chelsea actually won the league with 94 points, a pretty good return there. Arsenal, United and Liverpool behind them. City finishing all the way down in 6th place, but nowhere near as many teams in administration because of how much we changed the financial position down to minus 250 million, which hopefully means less clubs have been bailing themselves out. But you can see here, Chelsea doing perfectly fine at the moment. If we look at their landmarks, they have upgraded their youth and training facilities, came out of administration 2 years ago, so nothing happening there for them. And their finances are perfectly recovered with a huge amount of cash in there. That's £777 million. It's impossible to stop them getting the money. It honestly is. I don't know what else I can do other than keep hitting them with deduction after deduction. It wasn't even an awful lot of money. And yet they keep on pulling themselves out of it time after time without having any impact on their performance as a club. And this doesn't really reassure me for the element of financial management in the game, because if this is just the fix that comes along, why would you bother to manage your finances? Just run your club into debt and you'll be absolutely fine. Liverpool at least did have to come out of administration, but all that's done is give them a relatively normal bank balance of about £7-8 million. If we look at their profile, they've still got insecure finances listed, which is interesting, but they actually finished down. Oh no, they're currently sitting in 18th place in the Premier League. We've gone a bit too far ahead. You can see they are struggling a little bit, but that's because they went into administration and had a points deduction. Otherwise, no real telltale signs. Man City doing perfectly fine, nothing on there whatsoever. Do they still have over £1 billion in the bank? No, but they've got 654 million in their bank account. Manchester United as well, runners up in the Champions League, not impacting on their performance in Europe whatsoever. They do have slightly less cash though, just £15 million, but given there's not clearly been an injection, they've done very well, currently with just with secure finances rather than rich. Middlesbrough listed as rich, Newcastle rich, Norwich secure, QPR are rich despite being a newly promoted team, Spurs are rich, Watford rich. They're all rich, really. I mean, there's not a lot else that you can really say. There's not much point going into it. We know exactly what has happened with each and every club. So instead, what we'll have a look at is the transfers in the Premier League over the last couple of years and what kind of has been going on. So here's the first season, just as a barometer. You can see all the big clubs still really signing players, but not as much given it's the first season. The following year, though, PSG raiding the Premier League for Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne and Eden Hazard, spending a huge amount of money there, over 200 million. Liverpool did sign Naby Keita, which was a pre-arranged transfer. Nabil Fekir moving to Arsenal. Man United splashing out the cash, nearly 100 million. City did sign one big player in Camacho, but not quite as much being spent this season as in previous seasons. And then the following year, they came back with a vengeance, the big club, signing massive players like Brilian Bolo for nearly 80 million, Isco going to City for 65, Toby Alderweireld for 58 million, Carlos Soler for 53, and Serge Aurier was the biggest transfer out to Bayern. But the Manchester clubs were the 5 biggest transfers. 6 biggest transfers actually, and then a couple for Liverpool who were struggling. Not really much sign of Arsenal signing players, but it's hard to tell whether that is actually part of the experiment or just Arsenal being Arsenal. And Chelsea well down on where they would normally be. So you are seeing some suppressed transfer activity. Bristol City appearing quite high up near the top, and a lot of the promoted teams doing well. But this experiment is mostly hitting the mid-table teams from what I can see. And if we go back and look at the stages of the Premier League, you can see there are a lot of Championship clubs in this league now, which means we do need to drop down and have a look at the Championship, where at the moment Huddersfield and Brighton are leading. But where are the other Premier League clubs? Sunderland down here, not part of the experiment. Bournemouth are down here, but they've now got rich finances, although they've got David Moyes in charge. If we have a look at their landmarks, Bournemouth, then you can see they were relegated a little while ago. They came out of administration, got relegated in 2020, so just last season, but it looks like their money has largely recovered. And it'll be interesting to see if they do come bouncing back up, because they've got a lot of cash there, 167 million. What other teams are down in the Championship right now? You've got Stoke really struggling at the moment. Still got rich finances though. If we look at their landmarks, they went down. When did they get relegated? They got relegated last season. And in their finances, not actually doing as well, although they've still got £122 million in there. And maybe you guys should let me know in the comments whether I should hit the teams that have gone down to from the Premier League, or whether you should leave them. Because you can see at the moment, Swansea currently 22nd with insecure finances. So they came out of administration in September of last year, having already been relegated. So they were relegated in 2019 and then went into administration. And if you look at their finances, they have got about 40 million in the bank. So not as much as some of the other clubs. And the question is, will they be the first team to be relegated all the way down? No, Leicester are all the way down in League One. That is a bit of a shock. I was not expecting that whatsoever. Currently up in second place. And you can see their dramatic fall from Premier League champions to a couple of mid-table finishes, and then 18th and bottom of the Championship. They're currently rich in their finances, but if you have a look at the transfer history, you can see they've not been able to spend any money, with mostly players leaving the club. The previous year raised 61 million and the year before that 71. So they are the only team we've really seen actually having to fundraise, and they were relegated. They had their youth category raised, but they had a new owner coming in, yet they've still got relegated after that. And when you look at their finances, I think they look reasonably secure, but it's all about how much their wage bill is. So if you'd like me to hit Leicester with another big deduction, do let me know, because at the moment they're on course to go back into the Championship. So let me know in the comments how you want to see this taken forward in the next part. I would quite like to mess with the reputation ahead of the next episode, but I'm not sure which club should be hit with more financial deductions. So maybe I'm thinking I'll hit every club with about a minus 300 million and knock their reputation down to that of a League 2 team, and then see what happens, because they will not only have to sell players, they'll also have to deal with players that no longer want to be there. So that could be a nice double whammy. But do let me know down in the comments. Make sure to drop a like on the video if you are enjoying this experiment, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. But until next time, see ya!